Hey guys, it's Tony, and we're back on the bench. And this morning, I wanted to do a special video on a reel that's been sitting around here on the bench for a while, and it's been kind of a subject to a lot of neglect, I would say. But we're looking at a Shakespeare Wonderflyte model 1765 push button reel, old school reel. It's not really in bad shape, but it had a couple of problems. The first one being is that it was missing the handle nut completely. Okay, and so part of what I want to talk about in this video is how you can remedy a situation like that if you can't find the original part. The thread that was originally on this shaft, very very fine thread, and I couldn't find really anything that would work with it per se, as a, like an acorn nut, so to speak, like this. And so what I did is I just, got into an old tap and die set and, utilized, this die here to make a new thread, essentially. Okay. And then get an acorn nut, that would fit, that thread. Just went on down to the hardware store and picked up, a couple of these acorn nuts here. All right. So it's a little bit of a time consuming process, and sometimes you got to ask yourself, is the reel even worth it? Well, it was a small price to pay to make the reel work and function, because, the handle wouldn't stay on. But the other problem with this reel is it is really hard to turn. It does turn, but it's so sluggish. And, that's a result of probably really old grease and just not being utilized. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to inspect that and have a look and see what we can do to remedy that problem. Okay, and the first thing that we'll need to do here is we'll have to take apart that acorn nut, that handle nut that we just added. Okay, but yeah, we basically just rethreaded the shaft here, is all we did. Okay, so we've got our handle off. We'll take our star wheel off. And there's a washer hiding underneath that. I'm going to hose these off with some WD-40 here. It's not going to hurt anything at all. Probably a little bit on that handle as well, the handle knob. Okay, now on this side, we've got 3 screws here that have to come out. But this reel's made in the USA. Shakespeare's formerly a USA-made company. I almost kind of call them a godfather of fishing tackle these days. I believe that they're owned by Pure Fishing now, which a lot of the old fishing tackle companies are part of Pure Fishing. But we're going to have a look inside here, and we're going to see here. So we've got our button, that's attached here. We're just going to hose all this off and let that do its magic for a little while. Okay, so this is what we're talking about here. We've got this really, really old grease in here. And, you could probably hose this down with some WD-40 and clean it up, and it'll probably be like brand new. But we want to take apart the whole reel in its entirety. So we're going to take this apart here. We're going to have a look. It's a little dirty. It's not too bad. Okay, and then we've got this nut that has to come off up here, and we could probably do that with a nut driver, I would imagine. I just don't know what size it is. It looks like it's a 1/4 inch. We're going to find out here in a minute. Turns out it's actually a metric thread, so it's an 8mm. Okay, so loosen that up. Okay, and we've got There's a star washer in here of some kind, it looks like. I'll make note of pieces and parts. You're taking reels apart like this, okay? And you want to make note of the orientation. That's the way that goes there, okay? So you've got your spool here. I'm not 100% sure what's involved in taking that out, so we're going to have a look here. So yeah, you just push down on that pinion gear, and then you can pull that whole shaft out there. We're going to clean that up real good. I'm probably going to spend some time off camera cleaning up a lot of these parts here. Okay, and then we've got a main gear here, and that might need a little bit of penetrating oil to take that out. Okay, let that sink in there just for a second. You should be able to take just a small hammer like this after you've let that soaked in a little bit and just give it a little tap. Okay, you can see it's flattening out there. Okay. You should be able to just gently pull this out. There you have it. Okay, so pretty basic design. Okay, it's just these things haven't been taken apart or serviced in a long time, if ever. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pull all this apart, but you can see what we're talking about here. This grease here is so, you know, it's almost like a wax almost. It's so thick and it's so stiff. Okay, so we want to clean up all this. What I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to let this soak in for a little bit and clean a lot of these pieces off camera with the help of Q-tips and shop rags and, you know, some more WD-40, some toothbrushes and stuff like that. Clean up all these parts really well and then come back, and then we'll put the reel back together and we'll see how it works. Okay, so now we're ready to do some reassembly here. So we've cleaned up all of our parts here, and you know there was quite a bit of old grease. All right, so you know sometimes you just got to take your time using the penetrating oil, letting that sink in, and then going back with some toothbrushes. You know, we've been using some Q-tips, things like that, shop towels, of course, getting all that old grease, all the sand and grit and dirt out of here. Okay, so you know, we're going to go back here. So, you know, we've cleaned up our shaft. We've used some 4-0 steel wool right here. Clean up all these metal surfaces, make sure that they're nice and clean and plumb. There was a little bit of rust, a little bit of pitting going on here, which is probably why it was so challenging to, you know, get it out. You know, we had to give it a few light taps. Okay, no big deal. All right, but we got a spacer washer here. All right, and we want to make sure that that goes back in place. Okay, and we're just going to go back in the reverse order here. We're going to take a little bit of blue grease here to this shaft here to prevent any further rust damage. Okay, I'm going to start with that. Okay, and then we've got our main gear here. We've cleaned out all these teeth, you know, with the WD-40 and the toothbrush, of course. You can use a brass wire brush if necessary. You know, there was a lot of old grease just everywhere, basically. You know, this reel was probably never serviced, and, you know, more than likely. And if it was, you know, it hasn't been serviced in a long time. And that's what happens is, you know, you get that tar-like effect almost, or wax effect, you know, with that old grease, and it just bogs down the operation of the reel, you know, almost completely. Okay, now we've got the rest of our, you know, this is basically our drag washer here. It's a nice thick washer. It's in good shape, you know, for what it is. You know, this is not a saltwater rated reel per se. You know, this is really a freshwater reel, so you're not going to be, you know, fishing for big game with this. You've got your clicker wheel here, and you know, we've cleaned this up. This had a lot of tacky grease on it and stuff, you know, old grease. And so we cleaned that up really well, the best we can. So we'll slide that back in position. Okay. We've cleaned up in here. Okay. We want to take a little bit of real oil to this dog right here, a little dog lever. Okay. And also our anti-reverse lever or roller. Okay. Just going to go back over this just with a little bit more blue grease here just for good measure. And we'll slide this back in accordingly. All right, so it's like that. Just going to add a little bit more blue grease to these teeth before we get into the rest of it. Okay, we got our pinion shaft, okay, and pinion gear. Okay, we've cleaned all this up best that we can. We're going to go back to the pinion gear teeth. And we're going to get some of that grease on there. Like so. Okay. We should be able to just go back in the reverse order that we took this out. It looks like we kind of have to do a little song and dance with this here, but we should be able to get it with a little bit of work. So you need to open up on that spring, okay? And I guess that spring holds it in position. All right, so you have that. No problems there. And then we'll go back. We've got that spacer washer. There was a thin spacer washer that was resting here. Okay, and then we got our top cap here. You know, this is all, you know, pretty clean under here from what I can tell. Just take the shop rag here to the underneath of that, and we'll spin this back on here with a star washer and nut. And again, that's an 8mm nut. Okay. Already I can tell that's a lot better. So that's helpful. Okay. So now we can put our side plate back on and button. And I recommend just applying a little bit of real oil to these threads here. And we'll spin these up. put our washer back in there and our star wheel. We'll thread that back on. Okay. And the handle. And that acorn nut. Just remember to not over tighten anything, with these reels, okay? Especially with older ones where the metals are older and probably a little more frail. Okay. And then we've got our top cap and goes on like so. A lot better than it was, that's for sure. Anti-reverse works good, and you can hear that dog clicking in there. So there you have it. That is the Shakespeare Wonderflyte 1765 push button reel, all ready to go. And thanks again for watching. This is Tony with Back on the Bench. If you liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please make sure you do subscribe. Hit the notification button. That way you will be getting all the updates as to when there are new videos coming out. And I have quite a few more coming out here lined up on the bench. So stay tuned for those, and we'll see you next time.